Okay, for the next 12 minutes, I am going to be talking about confronting confusion. And I thought that because I like to demonstrate during these videos, I thought that the best thing for me to do would be to call up the scariest. For the next 12 minutes, I've got to do that. I am going to be talking about confronting confusion. And so much better. So yeah, I thought that the right thing to do to demonstrate would be for me to pull a book that I have never read, this novel. It's a famous work of Anglophone literature by this very, very famous Irish author, James Joyce. I can count the number of things that I know about this author, his time period in Ireland, all the whole thing. I know I was supposed to really, really pay attention to this stuff at some point in my life, and I didn't. And I've never read this book, and I've always been terrified of it. There's another one by the same author that I'm even more terrified of. But yeah, I just always assumed that I would not be able to read this book too hard. Okay, so that's one thing to check in on when you're thinking about confronting confusion is confusion takes some courage to deal with it. To really, it takes some stamina and some willpower to really pay attention to your thoughts. But also there's like the panic that is involved usually, especially if you're on a deadline, about what are you going to do if you don't understand, right? Okay, so how I would approach this really, this is in some ways sort of a silly demonstration because I have it out of context, right? You will always be getting your readings, your assignments, the whole thing is in some sort of context of a class, and that gives you a lot of leverage to be able to understand what you're doing. But if I'm just reading Ulysses here, let's just say I'm in a whole class that is just about Ulysses, and yeah, which I know I have seen happen. This is one of these books. So let's just say I'm in a whole class about this, and I'm going to be taken down about, I don't know, an eighth of this book per week, and then having paper assignments intermittently. So we'll just say it's going to be something like that. All right. So what I want to say about confronting confusion is that, and how I am preparing myself mentally for this task, is that if you know you're dealing with something confusing, first of all, you have to brace yourself for feeling lousy because it doesn't feel good to be confused. It can cause panic. You also need to start thinking about your purposes for reading. I'm just going to say, I'm looking for something to write about. I'm figuring I'm going to be asked to write a paper, and I want to find something to write about and make sure that I'm going to be able to write about it cogently because I understand the book, right? So there's that. So know your purposes, and these are all embedded in the syllabus. And the third thing is, am I on three, one? Yeah, two, purpose of reading. And the third thing is, think a little bit about your apparatus, okay? Well, it's a little bit bigger than that. What we're going to be engaging in, or what I engage in when I'm dealing with something difficult, is what people call metacognition, right? Thinking about your thinking. Some people will fold all of this into self-regulated learning and various forms of self-regulation, because what you're doing is sort of monitoring your comprehension, monitoring your thoughts, through the whole thing. It could be, yeah, so as you can imagine, monitoring your thoughts, and I know that some of you are really, really good at this already, but monitoring your thoughts as you are trying to move forward with the story, monitoring your comprehension level, that takes some real focus. This is full brain activity. The other thing, and that leads to the apparatus, okay? So you're going to have to figure out some way, and I will be figuring out some way of note taking as I'm moving. Since I'm thinking I'm going to want to write a paper about this, and since this is a very confusing book I'm expecting, my apparatus, okay, so that I can hold this whole book in mind and so that I can start thinking about possible papers, is that I'm going to be, first of all, doing my usual thing of that if there's something very clear and vivid, as in I feel like, ooh, this is something important that kind of shows me something, I'm probably going to make some mark about that. There's another level of this, or another mark that I'm going to be making is just a simple question mark. And this is if I feel like I am confused by something and it's important enough that I may have to return to it. Sometimes that rule about where I put in a question mark is far more stringent or far more loose. It depends on how the flow is and how much confusion I feel like I'm going to leave by the wayside. And sometimes I'll deal with things at different paces. But this is basically it. It's about noticing, where am I confused? Where am I enlightened, right? I'm confused. All right. So, which brings me to the next part. I am going to have to download this book. How do I do that? Maybe I can. Okay. Let me see where I was with this. This is some sort of ebook. Yeah, Ulysses, right? It's out of print. So if I'm going to read it here, I want to take notes on it. So I'm probably going to take. Hmm. It's gonna drive me crazy. I know. I just want to be able to take notes on it. Maybe I need to look at it as plain text. So sad. Ah, here we go. Not the best format, but it does at least, I believe, allow for some note taking. Or does it? Oh no, it's terrible. Okay. So this brings us to one of the problems of not being able to okay, of not being able to yeah, this is one of the issues, is of not having a hard copy of the book, which is actually my preference. I like to scribble in the margins and whatnot. But then also I do like to take notes on the screen, and I don't know how to download this into a version where I can actually take notes. So, all right. So let me just show you what's happening in my mind as I read this. Ah, James Joyce, Ulysses, terrifying. Oh, and then I'm looking at the table of contents because I just like to look at the shape of things. I've got a tiny 3-chapter introductory section, and then a tiny, what's that thing? All right, a tiny 3-chapter closing section, 18, like the 18 hours, waking hours of the day. All right, and 4, 5, 6. No, there aren't 18 working hours in the day, waking hours in the day. But you can see what I'm doing here is I'm even now trying to make observations. So there's 13 hours in the middle, right? No, 12 hours in the middle. They're not hours, 12 chapters in the middle and 3 on either end. So there's a big fat middle section to this book. So it's like introduction, body, conclusion. Okay. Okay, so what's happening right now is, and this takes some time, I hear about this often from y'all, this idea when you try and get started on something that's confusing, intimidating, dense, that your mind has trouble sort of tracking it, okay? I go through this too, and I'm probably a more experienced reader than you. So what I'm doing right at the beginning, I might read this first little section a few times to be able to slip in to the story. And I am already noticing things like the vocabulary level. And so I realized, shoot, I've never used the word stairhead before. Is that the top of the stairs, the bottom of the stairs? All I know, this guy's somewhere around stairs. There's some Latin here. I cannot remember what introibo means, but to the altar of God. Something like introibo, I think arrive at the enter to okay, and so I'm trying to just like, I had to read that a few times. This guy is shouting at that guy,
from the top of the ship, but I don't know what the gun rest is doing, round gun rest. So why a gun rest, right? So this is where, you know, I might just very casually start highlighting right there. I don't know that I'm going to do anything, but I've got a bead on it now. But I noticed it very early on. Oh, I'm not gripping to it. My mind isn't gripping yet. So I just let myself spin for a moment until I've slipped into this. One of my favorite YouTubers, who does Bigfoot research. He told me that, or he said on one of his videos that reading is one of the strangest activities that humans do, because it basically is looking at little squiggles on a screen or on a page and floridly hallucinating. And I think that is, yeah, it's this giant like sort of activity that has to go on in your mind as you're translating these words. So I needed to get in and see Plump Buck Mulligan, some plump dude. He calls this guy Kinch fearful Jesuit. He's got a mirror and razor. Okay, and this is all like Catholic imagery, right? Yeah, like he has a robe, but it's his bathrobe, basically, dressing gown. All right, I'm off. Nobody showed up for this either. Nobody cares about what I ever have to say, which is fine. Enjoy your day. I may be back.